Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all had a lovely lunch. It is my privilege to introduce our next keynote speaker, Mr. Philip Hudorf, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Atlantis Macquarie. Philip's family founded Bank Macquarie in 1746. It was one of the oldest banks in Switzerland. Philip is the family's fifth generation. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
He founded Atlantis Macquarie in 2018 to carry on his family heritage. Philip is joining us today to discuss preserving multi-generational wealth over 3 centuries. Before we start, I want to let you know this session was set up for Philip's father, Hans, initially, but he pulled out last week. So here we are, we have Philip.
Right. So, yeah, but I might have old-fashioned ideas, and my father maybe had more daring ideas than me. So thank you, Lily, for hosting me. Always great to be in the capital city of the world. London remains, despite everything, Brexit and all sorts of issues, the financial center of the world. And I think it's great to be here. So thank you for hosting me. I know you had great sessions this morning. So pardon my English. I trust you understand that my natural language is French. You must all have understood that by now.
Philip said earlier, I'm going to answer in French. You just ask me in Shanghainese. Doesn't matter what I talk. Shall we start? My first question to you, Philip. Macquarie has a long history since 1746, but in recent decades had a number of ownership changes. How has re-establishing your independence benefited the services you can offer to your clients?
Okay, thank you. Just for history, it's true that this brand exists since 1746, but obviously it was a different business at the time. And until the 20th century, it was basically banking, business, loans, and basically dealing with the credit markets. And in 1919, the current owner of Banque Macquarie died of the Spanish flu. So obviously, when the pandemic started 2 years ago, I was saying, oh my God, it's going to happen to me as well? No. So I was alone in the office, and here I am. So obviously, the business evolved, and in 1919, the bank was purchased by Credit Suisse. And when my father became chairman of Credit Suisse First Boston, and left after a 20-year career there, he asked Credit Suisse if he could take the brand back. And Credit Suisse kindly obliged. And therefore, in the early 1990s, we had a decision to make, which was, should we build back a private bank on the Swiss model of private banking, or should we use the American model, which is the family office? And basically, as we couldn't make a decision, we did both. So we helped 2 partners in Zurich to found Macquarie Family Office, and we transformed a kind of a wealth advisory service into a bank in Geneva in the early 1990s. And 5 years later, we basically looked at the result. And we didn't look at the result from a shareholder point of view, but we looked at the result from a client's perspective. And we clearly find out that the multifamily office was a better suited organization to defend the interest of clients and to deliver the right services and products to clients. So that is our little history.
Very interesting. You missed the best part this morning. Rockefeller and the JP Morgan and Rothschild all said the multiple family office is the future. So obviously you have an open source philosophy. towards its clients. What does that mean, and how in practice does it benefit your clients?
Yeah, so being independent is basically being independent from what and for what. So first of all, we are very fortunate. We operate from a country that is very liberal, Switzerland. And Switzerland is very open and treats, foreign clients the same way as local clients. So I think if you operate from a liberal state like the UK, Switzerland, Holland, and the United States, I mean, you can offer a lot of services and products to clients. So that independence allows a client potentially more choices that if they deal with a bank, because the bank, by definition, would want to propose products that they have developed. So I think that's a very important matter for clients that are coming from all over the world, and they have different needs. And those needs, you might not have them on the shelf. So you have to listen to the client, listen again, think about it, and go into the market to find the service or the product that they need. So being independent allows you to do that because you can take the time to do it. It's not always rewarding economically for our firm to find the right solution for the client, but it fits our values, which is to be next to the client, facing the financial industry, and finding the best solution for him.
You already answered a part of my next question.
I'm sorry.
How do you build and define a culture in wealth management? It's very important as a people business. And given you have clients with often different needs from different country, different culture.
Yeah, indeed. So in the Marquardt Group, we have about 10 offices in the world. And I would say each office has a defined market, and each office works differently. So the Geneva office, for example, works basically with continental Europeans. The Singapore office works with Asian clients. And each clientele have a different culture. And therefore, it's very difficult to have one size fit all. So you have really to adapt to the personal needs of each client and to respect their culture. Because I suppose a Japanese client thinks differently than a Brazilian client in many ways. So I think our ability to open different offices in the world based and respecting local culture and needs, I think is important. And I always was very interested in the advertisement campaign of HSBC a few years ago about culture, and I found it very amusing how they approach the topic, and I think that's the right way.
It's kind of a rival advocacy. You quoted HSBC. They have a PB banker today or join the panel later on. Okay. You must be pleased to hear you quote HSBC in your speech. And my next question, which is quoted quite a lot today, is how is the technology changing the way that wealth managers interact with their clients?
Okay, I think there are two words, which is speed and data. So technology obviously shrinks the time, which is a plus and a minus. So you are able with technology to reach clients very quickly through the social media, through digital channels, etc. Now the problem is we have too much information. So I think one of the great things would be to be able to filter that information, make it so granular that each client receives exactly what he needs and not a general information sets. So speed is good, but it's also bad because sometimes you push the button too quickly and you cannot get it back. So that's a challenge. For the data, of course, we have lots of data. I think it's with portfolio management system, customer relationship system, portfolio analytics, etc., you are able to crush a lot of data. But I think, honestly, this is really useful for the firm in responding to regulatory demands and audit and manage and do the asset management in a better way. Clients, I don't think today benefit from the data that we have yet. And honestly, I think only the FANGs or GAFA, I don't know how you say it in English, the big technological platform, they will be able to use the data they have on us to provide us exactly with the right service. But I think a small firm like ours, or even larger firms, I think they have challenges to use the data in favor of the client. Yeah.
It's quite interesting because you mentioned that data is relating to technology, but our last panel hosted by Credit Suisse, Haley and Louise mentioned different next gen has different techniques. Obviously, Prince Charles is a next gen as well. I'm pretty sure he's not really technology savvy. So how do you maintain the personal, bespoke nature of the client relationship as you move to a more modern tech platform?
Okay, so stepping back, I think in the last 10 years, the big commercial private banks have used technology to actually create a stronger bond between their firms and clients. And actually what they've been trying a little bit is to cut the middleman there. And the middleman is the relationship manager. And for firms, the relationship manager was always kind of a risky guy in the firm because he could always take his clients with him and leave the company. So by creating, through technology, a direct link between the client and a user experience, I think is a very powerful tool for banks. And I think they've been very successful in implementing those innovations. So the stickiness of the client with an institution, I think today is stronger than what it was 10 years ago. So obviously, I am on the other end of the spectrum. I use technology, but I keep the relationship very central. So the relationship manager at our firm is at the center of our business. So we are actually doing the contrary. We are empowering our relationship managers. We are giving them a lot of liberty to operate. We are attaching a lot of importance between the life and work balance. So they actually relax. They can spend time with their clients. And I think it works also. So I think both models can work. But obviously, in my business, the relationship manager is key. Although it's more risky for the shareholders, obviously. But it fits our principle and values where the client's interest comes first. And he wants a relationship manager to take care of him or her, of course. So does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, good. The last comments, he, son, her, is quite sensitive. But what are the advantages of a smaller independent platform versus the scale of a wealth manager, which is part of a bigger, more diverse financial institutions?
Well, I wouldn't say the small guys are winning. In a global world, obviously the bulge brackets, banks and financial institutions, they have scale, they can be everywhere, they can be extremely price competitive. So, but there is space for everybody. And if you are a client and you have a choice between, you can have a big asset management firm like Fidelity and just work within the Fidelity world. You can work with Goldman Sachs. you can work with UBS, or you can work with Marquardt. It's a whole different experience in each case. So again, we are back to human relationship. And obviously, at the end, it's the client who makes the choice. Now, to answer your question, I think the best analogy is we're a little bit the special forces of the industry. So we're tiny, we're a tiny group, we have good cohesion, and we can really take care of the client by putting all our attention and resources for a few clients. So I wouldn't say we're exclusive, because that would be a lie, but by nature, we cannot deal with volume. We have to take care of a certain number of clients, and we have to stop our growth there. And then if we hire another relationship manager, then he will bring his clients, he will develop the business, and we can grow. So we are somehow constrained in our growth. But actually, we can be faster than a big organization. And there's been many cases in my professional career, because I take care of clients, where I have beaten big banks, and just because I was more reactive, maybe less pushy, more focused. And yeah, I think that's the advantage.
Very interesting. Because when I had a pre-panel call with your dad, he said, I don't want any questions. I'll just get on the stage, talk, one word, relationship. So that's probably you can carry on for 3 centuries. Yeah. Now, my last question is, what are the 3 key things that your clients are asking you for today?
Okay. I think today clients want to be heard. They want us to listen. A big part of the job is listening, being patient. I think that's very important. A lot of time clients have needs that does not interest our industry. You know, a client has different needs when he's 30 years old and when he's 70. So you need to be able to evolve also with a client. That's very important. The second thing I would say, and the banks will not like what I'm going to say, but they want us to remove the friction that they are experiencing with the financial industry. And that's not because of the financial industry, it's more because of the regulation. And the financial industry has become an extended arm sometimes of the state and of the regulatory authorities. And that creates a lot of friction, a lot of distrust. So we take care of that, and we shield them from that, and they get a lot of comfort from that. And I think that's an important need today clients have. And the third one, I would say, obviously, is a little bit asset diversification. And when I mean asset diversification, it means diversification in the local market and offshore, which is not easily addressable when you're a large firm. You will send a client to an office in Zurich, then an office in Hong Kong, so you will deal with 2 different teams. With us, you always have one point of contact, and I think that's key. So asset diversification, preservation, and succession planning. Succession planning today is extremely complex because the current generation, they live all over the planet. So I think this is a challenge for everybody, and I think it's best addressed by using specialized service outside of our firms.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few more minutes left. I was just wondering if any audience would like to ask some questions.
There's one in the back, yeah.
Thank you very much. Michelle Chivunga, I own a blockchain investment company here in London. I'm just really curious around what your thoughts are around investing into women-led businesses and whether we can you hear me?
Yeah, I didn't hear which businesses?
women-led businesses.
Yeah.
Yes. What your thoughts are around that? Because obviously there's a big gap, I think, at the moment in terms of investing into gender-led investment, and what your thoughts are, whether you're seeing from your clients that there is an appetite for that. I also represent the African Union, which represents 54 heads of governments in Africa. And one of our focus areas is really to encourage more investment into the African continent. Also wonder whether your clients are also engaging on the African side, and what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. So at our level, at Marquardt level, we have about 50% of our clients are women, and this is a growing trend. And this was not the case, I would say, about 10, 15 years ago. Now, do women have different requests or needs than a male client? I'm not so sure, but the psychology is definitely different. If there are professional women in career, obviously it's different than from a lady who inherited from her deceased husband. So I wouldn't say there are big differences, but in my opinion, female relationship managers are extremely good at this job. Don't ask me why, but they're extremely good. And I think it's a growing clientele, and but I wouldn't have a specific approach to female clients, definitely not. Regarding Africa, I'm not familiar with it because my markets are mainly Western Europe, North America, and South America. But there are certainly people in the room that know about this market. Pleasure.
Anyone?
Hi. I was just wondering, if the pandemic had an impact on your strategies for investment and your relationship with your clients.
Sorry, I didn't catch.
Hi. I was just curious how the pandemic has impacted
Oh, yeah.
your relationship with your clients and your investment strategies.
Sure. No, very large impact. I would say the first impact is you cannot meet your client as often as you're used to do. And this is very important in our kind of business because personal contact remains the communication of choice. Secondly, I would say people kind of put on hold decision taking. So trying to convince somebody to move his assets from one institution to another during the pandemic can be really challenging. That's for sure. So I would say it's not that business stopped at all. We managed to grow during the pandemic, but it definitely was difficult. Yes.
Thank you. Denise Kenyon-Rouvinet. I just have a question related to your own next generation. So do you have anything specific in terms of training on how you train them to take over such, a 300-year-old legacy, because it's not a continuity of the bank, but the family office and the family in financial services? Is there anything special that you do with them, and do you have any conditions for them joining the family venture?
Okay, thank you for the question. My father was an investment banker. He couldn't have the patience that are required to deal with, individual clients, and I didn't have the patience to deal with governments and companies. So it was a good fit, I have 4 children today. The eldest is doing currently a master's at LSE. So he has an interest in finance for sure, but I haven't pushed. So as a parent, I would leave a lot of freedom to my children to choose whatever path they want to choose. I think that's modern parenting, I suppose. So I don't think today succession within a family is so important. If you look at my cousins running, for example, the Geneva oldest private banks like Pictet, Lombard-Odier, they're actually taking partners that are not coming from family background. They're taking partners that are not coming from the same cultural background. So I think the world has changed a lot. And firms can carry a name or a brand without actually having a family member in the company. Now, as a shareholder, the family will always be very keen to keep a part of the business, of course.
Sorry, we're running out of time. So that gentleman is, let me say last question, but Philip will stay here for coffee and a champagne. So you are very welcome
Champagne.
to grab him in person to ask any further questions.
Thank you, Philip. Chris Marati from Pareto Economics again. I wanted to ask you, when it comes time to helping your clients better understand the issues of today, if you don't have the expertise in-house, what are the criteria you look for when partnering up with other organizations that can provide that knowledge gap that you may lack?
Thank you. No, this is a great question, of course. Puts me immediately on the defensive. Because when you are small, you cannot compete with large firms that have access to a wealth of organization, analysts, accountants, etc., lawyers, etc. But my advantage is I can go where the information is. And being independent, I'm actually welcome as a seeker of that information, because on the other side, my counterparty, they can monetize that information and I can pay for it. So that's my advantage. Now, the way we have structured it in the group is we do have what I call service level agreements between the different entities and a central entity in Zurich, which is actually far larger than our organization. They have about 60 people. And there's a lot of information and analytics that flows into that organization. So the different entities will, go to Zurich, get whatever they want, and if they don't find it in Zurich, they will go and buy it elsewhere. I think it's very important to have that capacity to seek the information, the advice, the services, also outside of your organization. And I just will finish with a point. I have seen now banks that even allow some of their clients to custody their assets at a competitive bank. And I think that's great for the client.
Thank you, Philip.
Pleasure.
It has been such a great
Thank you for
pleasure to have you here.